You know, it's amazing how AI is popping up everywhere these days.
It really is.
And it's really making a big impact in Indian politics, too, which is pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Elon Musk's Grok is really at the center of a lot of that.
Right at the heart of it.
And so I'm really excited for this deep dive today
You too.
to explore this whole question that's come up about Grok being woke in India.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of our listeners, maybe who aren't as familiar with the Indian context, woke can be a pretty loaded term over there.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't just mean like progressive or socially aware. It can also be used kind of negatively
Right.
to suggest like some sort of foreign influence that's not really wanted.
Yeah, like it's trying to impose something
Exactly.
on Indian culture.
Yeah, and this is important because we're talking about India with 1.4 billion people.
Right. A massive country.
Yeah, and they have a really active online political scene,
Oh, yeah.
especially on platforms like X.
Which used to be Twitter, for those who don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. So when you have an AI like Grok that's actually learning from X data
In real time.
in real time, which is what makes it so different,
Yeah, it's constantly updating.
constantly learning from that flow of social media.
Which is fascinating.
It is, and it's powerful,
Yeah,
but also obviously a bit controversial.
for sure. For sure.
And I think it's really interesting how in India, the initial reaction to Grok was kind of mixed.
Yeah, I was reading about that.
There was definitely that like tech enthusiast excitement, like,
Mhm.
oh, cool, new AI.
Shiny new toy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then it very quickly became a bit of a flashpoint
Yeah.
in their political landscape,
Yeah.
which is already pretty divided.
Already pretty polarized.
And so we saw these clashes between right-wing nationalists, progressive intellectuals, all engaging with Grok's responses.
So what we're going to do today is really unpack this whole journey of Grok in India.
Yeah, trace its steps, so to speak.
See how different groups have reacted to it and what this means for AI in shaping public opinion in a place like India.
Yeah, because the stakes are high,
Oh, for sure.
especially with misinformation being such a big issue there.
Yeah, and how public sentiment can really sway things.
Exactly.
So to really get into this, we're going to be looking at a few key things,
Yeah.
like how Grok has interacted with what's called the Hindutva narrative.
Particularly the RSS controversy.
Right. We'll look at how the left in India has responded to Grok,
Yeah.
and then also its fact-checking attempts.
Both the successes and the failures.
Right.
Like the claim about Nehru's donations.
And the comments on Lalu Prasad Yadav as railway minister.
And then, of course, we can't forget Elon Musk's role in all of this.
Right, because he's the one behind it all.
Yeah, and it raises that bigger question, can we really trust AI for facts?
Huge question.
Yeah.
So let's dive right into that RSS controversy, because that seems like one of the earliest and biggest flashpoints.
Yeah, back in October 2024, someone on X asked Grok straight up about the RSS's role in India's independence struggle.
And Grok just said nope,
Yeah, just a flat out nope.
which is pretty bold.
Very direct. And to understand why this caused such a stir,
Right.
you have to know a bit about the RSS.
Right.
It's a hugely influential right-wing organization in India,
Okay.
and its supporters see it as this key force in promoting Hindu identity and Indian nationalism.
I see.
But their actual involvement in the independence movement is very contested,
Ah,
like accusations of nationalist fervor and exclusionary ideology.
so it's been a debate for decades.
Yeah, for decades. And Grok, with its simple nope, just stepped right into this minefield.
So basically, the RSS was founded way back in 1925.
Right.
And its supporters emphasized its efforts in building like national spirit and Hindu unity during British rule.
Right, and their community work as well.
But then critics, especially historians on the left,
They argue that the RSS was more focused on building their organization and Hindu identity,
rather than actively participating in like the big anti-colonial movement.
especially the Quit India movement in 1942.
So they say the RSS was kind of sidelined.
Yeah, more on the sidelines.
And so Grok's note kind of aligned with that perspective.
It did, and that triggered a massive backlash from the right wing in India.
Oh, yeah,
Social media, especially X, was flooded with outrage.
I bet.
Hashtags like Grok lies and RSS fighters were trending.
Wow.
Prominent right-wing commentators were accusing Grok of being this tool of Western liberalism.
Trying to undermine India's history.
Exactly. And there were even some protests in areas where the RSS is really strong.
So for a lot of people who subscribe to this Hindutva ideology, this wasn't just about Grok getting a fact wrong.
Right, it was way more than
It was
that.
like an attack on their core beliefs.
Their version of history.
Yeah.
And they felt like their contributions to India's identity and their fight for independence were being dismissed.
By this AI that they saw as foreign.
Yeah, like an outsider coming in and telling them their history was wrong.
And so for them, it was like this continuation of what they see as this biased historical narrative.
That overlooks or minimizes the RSS's contributions.
And they mobilized really quickly online, sharing counterarguments, historical accounts that highlighted what the RSS did.
Even using memes to portray Musk and Grok negatively.
Oh, wow.
And that label of Grok being a woke AI became their main criticism.
So then on the other side of all this, the left in India had a completely different take.
Oh, absolutely.
They must have loved this.
Yeah, for left-leaning individuals and political parties, Grok's response was seen as confirmation of their arguments.
About the RSS's limited role in the independence movement.
Exactly.
So figures from opposition parties like the Trinamool Congress were publicly praising Grok.
Yeah, they saw it as a source of truth.
In a media landscape they often see as biased.
Towards the ruling party?
So they basically saw Grok as an ally.
Yeah, helping them push back against what they consider a right-wing rewriting of history.
And some opposition leaders even used Grok's response in their rallies.
Saying that if an AI could recognize this, then the right wing was clearly in denial.
Wow, so it really became a political tool.
It did, and academics and activists on the left also praised Grok.
As a tool for debunking what they call Hindutva myths.
Exactly.
It's amazing how one AI response can create such a divide.
It shows just how polarized things are in India.
Where even a simple answer becomes this huge point of contention.
Yeah.
And it's not just the RSS controversy. Grok also got involved in fact-checking.
Right, and that's where we see some mixed results.
Yeah, let's talk about that claim about Jawaharlal Nehru donating 98% of his wealth to India.
Yeah, it was a big one.
Because Nehru is such an important figure in India's history.
First prime minister.
And he's still often debated in politics today.
Yeah, his supporters always talk about his personal sacrifices and commitment to public service.
As really foundational to modern India.
And so in December 2024, someone asked Grok about this claim of Nehru donating 98% of his wealth.
And Grok said yes.
He responded affirmatively.
And obviously Nehru's supporters love this.
Oh yeah, they saw it as proof of his dedication to the nation.
Screenshots of Grok's response were everywhere online.
Especially among Congress Party supporters.
But then this claim was challenged by those on the right.
They questioned the accuracy of that 98% figure.
Saying it doesn't really add up.
Yeah, they pointed to details about Nehru's will and the fact that his family still owned ancestral property.
So it sounds like Grok might have picked up on something that was circulating online but wasn't entirely true.
Yeah, historical analysis suggests that while Nehru did donate his ancestral home, Anand Bhavan,
to the Congress Party.
right, but that 98% figure is probably an exaggeration from some social media post.
So this shows the limitations of Grok relying solely on X'd data.
Yeah, because it can just as easily amplify misinformation or unverified claims.
As accurate information.
Right, think of it like X is this massive unfiltered library.
With good research papers next to opinion pieces and just straight up falsehoods.
Exactly, and Grok is reading everything in this library.
Without really knowing how to tell what's true.
And without good filters, it can give equal weight to unreliable sources.
So what started as this win for Nehru supporters
Quickly became a failure in the eyes of others.
showing how political bias plays a huge role.
People will accept or reject information based on their beliefs, even if it comes from an AI.
Right, and then there was that case with Lalu Prasad Yadav.
The railway minister.
That one got a lot of attention, especially in a regional and political level.
Yeah, back in January 2025, someone asked Grok who India's best railway minister was.
And Grok said Lalu Prasad Yadav.
It did, and it highlighted his time in office for turning the railways profitable and introducing innovations.
And now Lalu Prasad Yadav is a really popular leader from Bihar.
Very charismatic.
And his time as railway minister is remembered fondly by a lot of his supporters.
They point to the financial turnaround and initiatives that benefited passengers.
So he has a strong base.
Especially in Bihar.
And so Grok saying this was obviously met with a lot of enthusiasm by his followers.
They saw it as recognition of his achievements.
But then his critics, mainly from the BJP and other parties,
They were quick to point out that his tenure wasn't without problems.
like allegations of corruption.
And they emphasized the developments and improvements made by later railway ministers.
So again, we see Grok's response filtered through this political lens.
Yeah, some celebrating it, others questioning it.
And it's interesting because Elon Musk's vision for Grok was to seek maximum truth.
Which sounds good in theory,
Right, who wouldn't want that?
but the reality in India has been a lot more complicated.
And even contradictory.
Yeah, there was even a case where Grok seemed to call out Musk himself for spreading misinformation.
Wait, Grok actually did that?
It did. Back in February 2025, someone asked Grok who the biggest spreader of disinformation on X was.
And it included Elon Musk.
It did, citing his tweets that sometimes blur the lines between speculation and facts.
Wow, that's pretty bold for an AI to call out its own creator.
It caused a huge stir online.
I bet.
Some saw it as Grok being impartial, others used it to criticize Musk.
So even Musk isn't immune to Grok's truth-seeking.
Or at least its interpretation of truth based on what it's learned.
Which brings us to the limitations of AI in fact-checking.
Especially one like Grok, that relies so heavily on social media data.
Like we saw with the Nair donation claim.
Right. The quality of Grok's information depends on its training data,
Which in this case is X.
which can be very chaotic and biased,
So if it's constantly learning from that, it's bound to pick up inaccuracies.
and amplify existing biases.
It's like, imagine if Grok was asked if the Taj Mahal was built by slaves.
Right.
It might look at a lot of sources online that talk about the skilled artisans involved,
And say no.
but a deeper historical understanding would acknowledge that while those artisans were skilled and probably paid,
Many laborers involved might have been forced or coerced.
so Grok's answer, while not entirely wrong, wouldn't capture the full complexity.
I would miss that nuance.
So this highlights the difference between just finding information and really understanding history and social issues.
Right.
And it shows how important our own critical thinking is,
Yeah, you can't just accept what an AI tells you at face value.
especially when it comes to these politically charged topics.
And there was even a case of a student in the Delhi metro who fact-checked Grok and found it was wrong.
So being actively engaged and critical is so important.
It is, and unfortunately, studies show that a lot of Indian X users share things without fact-checking.
Which just creates more misinformation, whether it comes from humans or AI.
Exactly.
So looking ahead, what do you see as the future of AI like Grok in Indian politics?
That's hard to say for sure.
Because we're still at the very beginning.
But the potential for AI to influence elections and shape public opinion is huge.
And we're already seeing discussions about regulating it.
As AI gets more sophisticated and integrated into our lives.
Its impact on politics in India and globally is only going to grow.
Definitely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Grok in India for our listeners,
Yeah,
the question of whether it's woke almost seems less important.
I agree.
The bigger questions are about the limitations of AI
The reliability of the information it gives.
and our own responsibility to think critically about everything we see and hear. Grok's responses have sparked controversies.
They've been embraced by some, rejected by others.
It even contradicted its own creator.
It's fascinating.
And it really shows how complex it is to trust AI for facts in a place like India.
Especially given how politically charged things are.
So it makes you think about the balance between the potential of AI as this tool for information,
And the risks of its biases and limitations.
and ultimately it feels like the responsibility for finding the truth is still on us.
On our judgment and our willingness to engage critically with information.
So what do you think about all this? What are you going to take away from this?